How's it going? So, as you can probably imagine, we're going to talk today about the Polaroid SX-70. And ignore that drop there. And the reason I did that is because I really also wanted to tie in talking about the latest Impossible Project film. It's rather good, and as you can see, I'm not shielding it here. I just let it come out of the camera, and so you can kind of have it sitting there, and we'll watch it develop as time goes on. So the Polaroid SX-70 is one of my favorite cameras. There are so many intricate components to it that make me really enjoy it, from the usability of it to how actually compact it can get. Most instant cameras, as I'm sure you're aware, are anything but. And so just being able to have it fold down and actually kind of fit pretty easily in a camera bag, or I've even had it thrown in my back pocket while I'm walking around. Now granted, it does tend to make my pants want to fall down, but overall it's not so bad. And when you compare it to like the big boxy Polaroid cameras, it's a much more manageable approach. But I mean, it's also the beauty of it, the overall design, the lens on it is absolutely fantastic. It focuses down to 10 inches. It's just, there's really so much going for it all at once that I really have to say it's one of my favorite cameras of all time. And so to give kind of a quick overview of the camera itself and the film that goes along with it, that's why we're here right now. So the Polaroid SX-70, designed by Polaroid in the late 1960s leading up into the early 1970s. The SX-70 was actually the code name initially for it. That kind of just stuck with it once it went into development. And it's been kind of a staple of camera design for many generations now. There really hasn't ever been a camera before or after that's anything like it. It's a folding single lens reflex camera, and that's the important thing to know, that it's a single lens reflex camera. More often than not with Polaroids, you have no focusing method whatsoever. It's a point and shoot. It's a plastic lens. It's really poorly made. But with this, what you see is what you get. You focus in the viewfinder. You know exactly how your final print is going to come out. And that's what sets it so much apart. There's so much more creativity and from a tool and a usage perspective that the SX-70 allows. You can also get wide-angle telephoto lenses, although they are pretty hard to find. Things like electronic flashes, as you saw me use earlier, self-timers, cable releases, tripod mounts, because unfortunately neither of mine have the tripod mount on them, and if you have a camera like this that doesn't have the tripod mount, you need to get this big hunky plastic adapter thing. But usually I'm not using my camera with a tripod. Usually I'll just use it kind of on the fly and really casually along with the film. Now, speaking of the film, if you're not at all aware of kind of how a Polaroid works, this is a film cartridge, and as you could probably guess, the film goes directly inside of here before it gets exposed. With Impossible Project, who obviously are the only makers of film for these cameras anymore, you get 8 shots per cartridge. And you have to really make sure that if you're using one of these cameras, you buy the right type of film. The film for the Impossible Project camera, the i1, doesn't have a battery contained, and with these guys, you do need a battery inside of it to work. The camera is battery operated, it's electronic, and so as you can see, nothing will happen. But then once I throw this guy in, the camera comes to life, and I can go ahead and take pictures with it. Obviously, it's not spitting anything out. But the reason I mention all of this is because Polaroid cameras are one of those cameras where they kind of either work or they don't. There's not a whole lot of middle ground. And so if you're ever hunting for one, if you're trying to find one, if you're going garage sailing or estate sailing or going thrift shopping during the day, and you're specifically looking for a Polaroid camera, or you really want to find an SX-70, I always try and carry one of these around with me anyway, just so I can throw it in the camera and test and make sure that it works. The batteries don't last all that long once the film's been expired, so even if there is a cartridge in there and nothing's happening, it's probably just because the battery's dead, and it's worth it at that point to just pull it out. You'll lose a photo, but odds are if the battery's dead, the film's dead as well, and throw your well-known pack in as well. Now, the Impossible Project batteries do last a lot longer than the Polaroid ones as well, so if you do find a pack with a dead battery, but the film in it is still good, or as good as expired Polaroid film can be, it's definitely worth it then, again, to use one of these empty packs, pull the film out in a dark bag, put it into here, and you can continue using it. Now, the SX-70 came in a whole bunch of varieties, and I used to have a whole bunch more than this, but I've really trimmed it down over the last couple of years as I minimize and get down to the cameras that I actually use. So this guy right here, the silver and brown, is kind of the classic. It was the first one to be released. They actually had a few different varieties of it, and you can kind of tell what's the earlier model, what's the later. The earlier ones won't have the focusing distance on the lens surround here. They're just these hash marks. They don't mean anything. They're just for design. But then if you look at the viewfinder, this one has a split image prism. The very, very earliest ones that were only released on the East Coast, kind of in the first couple of months, were had no split prism finder. They were it was just an open viewfinder, and the theory behind it, from Edwin Land's perspective anyway, was that he wanted you to not feel like you're using a camera, but like you're just looking out into the open. And so that's why the first models did not have that split image finder. Now, the split image finder is something that I really recommend using. The sonar cameras, for example, the Polaroid autofocus cameras, Polaroid SX-70 autofocus cameras anyway, they don't have that split image finder once again because Polaroid was anticipating you were going to use the autofocus function most of the time. And in those ones, it's okay. And the sonar ones are actually really cool in that they're, the camera's now four decades old, and they can still focus faster in pitch black than just about any other camera on the market today because of that sonar function. Now, it is this huge, bulky piece of equipment, and it adds a lot of heft, and that's why I don't have any more of them. When it comes to the SX-70, I really prefer the original models just because of how compact they are, and they don't futz around with any extra features. I can focus on my own. I don't need the sonar. And then kind of the tier beyond that is obviously the Polaroid SLR 680 and 690. Now, those two cameras came out in the 80s and 90s respectively, and the SLR 680 and 690 use 600 type film. Both of these use SX-70 film. One thing to note, though, is that with those cameras, you will tend to pay a premium, the 690 especially. And to be honest, I don't really find them to be all that worth it. With these two cameras right here, you can expect to spend around $100 for one that's known in working condition. The price has been dropping recently. They used to be commanding far, far higher prices just a couple of years ago in the mid 200s for a working condition camera. Now, you can still expect to pay that, but only if it's been refurbished or if it comes with a warranty if you're buying from the Impossible Project directly. But for your general eBay or Craigslist purchase, $100 and under, I typically won't gamble on one unless it's $40 or under, and even then it's pretty sparse that I do buy one these days, mostly because I'm really set with my two cameras here. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why do you have two cameras then? And the reason being is the two different kinds of film. So both SX-70 and 600 film, it comes in the exact same cartridge here, looks the same except for the packaging. The Impossible Project recently did a rebrand, so their latest film for 600 comes like this. It's blue. SX-70, I believe, is kind of a burnt umber or an orange color, and it has descriptions on the back for what cameras can use this film, which is really handy, and I do actually like their new branding quite a bit better. So this one is for SX-70 film, and this one over here is for 600 film. It has a neutral density filter over the lens to decrease it by 2.5 stops so that I can use a 600 film no problem. And I do typically use the 600 film just because I don't know. I guess I could use the SX-70 film, but I tend not to. And then so some of the pictures here, this one is their latest batch of film, and I'll actually, screw this. There's the image right there. And as you can see, the tonality of it, the colors, they're all much more manageable. Same thing, I didn't actually block these or shield these from light when they ejected from the camera. They just kind of came out. I held them, I slipped them under the camera. I wasn't being overly cautious about them being overexposed. I just kind of enjoyed them and tried to shoot them like Polaroid film. Now, one thing you will note is that the Impossible Project film is much slower to develop. Expect a full image in about 30 minutes, but you can start to see the first kind of inklings of an image, after 30 seconds to a minute, which is really a huge improvement. It used to take, 5-10 minutes to even get to that point where you can be like, oh yeah, hey, my camera worked. Here's another photo. Again, I'm kind of going heavy with the American flags here, but that's where we were at. There was a whole bunch of patriotism going on over the weekend when I was shooting these. Again, much nicer tonality, and then even when compared to let's go with this guy right here. This image has a much higher contrast, and so it's while I guess you could consider it to be more interesting visually, I'm actually more appreciative of this image again, just because it is more natural, and the Impossible Project film has kind of been so volatile and so hard to predict that seeing an image like this that has really even tones, really even contrast, finer details is a huge step. and a huge improvement over even their last generation. So actually, one last thing. Let's do this really quick. So this is where the image is at, and you can see that the images are coming together much more smoothly. This completed image that you can see now, it has been about 30 minutes. I let it sit for quite a while to develop, but it's amazing for not shielding at all. You can see that, especially even like looking down at the bottom, there's only a little hint of breaking the light barrier there, which is absolutely phenomenal. I'm really excited about this film. I have a few more packs with me in my refrigerator, and I'm actually probably going to go buy a few more tomorrow because I really like this. I've been on kind of an impossible project hold for a long time, and this is kind of bringing me back into the fold. So anyway, with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to subscribe. Follow me on social media, on Instagram, on Twitter. I've included links to those below. And until next time, thanks for watching.